Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive stone structure rising from the red sand. The ruins of the Vorthic Empire stretched across the desert like the bones of some ancient giant. His team had been studying dead civilizations for 3 years, but nothing had prepared him for this place. "Captain, you need to see this," Dr. Lisa Grant called from inside the main temple. Her voice echoed through the CUM system with barely contained excitement. Jake walked through the entrance, his boots clicking against the polished stone floor. The Vorthak had built this temple 12,000 years ago, long before humans had even discovered fire. Now, their empire was nothing but dust and broken monuments scattered across a dozen worlds. "Professor." Ben Carter knelt beside a wall covered in strange symbols. His translation device hummed softly as it worked to decode the ancient script. "This is incredible," he whispered. "The language patterns are completely different from anything we've found in the outer chambers." Commander Amy Rodriguez stood guard near the entrance, her weapon ready. She had learned to be cautious around alien ruins. Too many archaeological teams had disappeared over the years, victims of automated defense systems or worse. "What exactly are we looking at, Doc?" Dr. Grant ran her scanner over the stone tablets. "These appear to be warning messages. The Vorthak carved them deep into the bedrock like they wanted them to survive forever." She paused, studying the readouts. "Ben, are you getting the same translation I am?" Professor Carter nodded slowly. His face had gone pale. "The coordinates they're describing, they match a star system in the outer rim, yellow star, third planet from the sun." He looked up at Jake. "Captain, they're talking about Earth." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of warnings?" "Give me a minute." Carter adjusted his equipment and moved to another section of the wall. The symbols here were larger, carved with obvious care. The Vorthek called themselves the Watchers. They were monitoring something ... or someone. Amy stepped closer, her hand moving to her sidearm. "Monitoring what?" Dr. Grant's scanner beeped rapidly. "The stone composition here is different. They used a harder material for this section, something that would last longer." She looked at the symbols with growing concern. "These aren't just coordinates. They're warnings about the inhabitants of that system. Humans?" Jake asked. "That's what it looks like." Carter's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. "The Vorthak wrote about a species that lived near the yellow star. They called them Guardians." Amy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Guardians? Have they seen our history? We've been fighting wars for thousands of years." "That's not what they meant," Dr. Grant said quietly. She had moved to a third tablet, this one covered in smaller symbols. "They're saying humans guard something that must never be released." Jake walked over to examine the symbols. Himself, even without the translation device, he could sense the urgency in the carved words. The Vorthak had spent enormous effort creating these warnings. "What are we supposed to be guarding?" Professor Carter worked in silence for several minutes. The only sounds were the hum of their equipment and the distant wind blowing through the ruins. Finally, he looked up. "I'm not sure I'm translating this correctly. The symbols are ... unusual." "Try your best," Jake said. "The Vorthak wrote about something they called the thing that devours light. They said it was trapped in a place between worlds and that the Guardians near the yellow star were the only thing keeping it contained." Dr. Grant's scanner let out a sharp alarm. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the lower levels. Something down there is still active." Amy immediately raised her weapon. "We should leave now." "Wait," Carter said. He had found another section of text. "There's more here." The Vorthak weren't the only ones who knew about this. They mentioned other civilizations, other empires that left similar warnings. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. How many others? "The symbols suggest at least 6 different species. All of them extinct now, but they all left messages about the same thing." Carter's hands shook as he worked the translation device. "They all pointed to the same star system. They all warned about the same Guardians." "Us," Amy said flatly. "Yes, but Captain, there's something else. The Vorthak didn't just leave warnings. They left instructions. Dr. Grant looked up from her scanner. Instructions for what? How to contact the other warning sites. They created a network, a way for anyone who found these ruins to locate similar messages across the galaxy. Jake considered this information. If other civilizations had left warnings about Earth, about humanity, then there might be answers waiting among the stars. But there might also be dangers they couldn't imagine. Can you access these other sites? He asked. Carter nodded. The coordinates are all here. 6 different locations, all of them in systems where we know ancient civilizations once lived. Amy stepped forward. Captain, I don't like this. If these civilizations were warning about us, maybe there's a reason. Maybe some things are better left alone. Or maybe, Dr. Grant said, we need to understand what we're supposed to be guarding. The Vorthak seemed to think it was important. Enough to dedicate their entire civilization to watching us. Jake walked to the center of the chamber and looked up at the carved ceiling. The symbols there were different, arranged in patterns that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. Lisa, what's your professional opinion? The evidence is clear. Multiple civilizations, separated by thousands of light years and millions of years, all left the same message. They all pointed to Earth. They all called us guardians. She paused. Captain, I think we need to find out what we're guarding, and if we don't like what we find? Dr. Grant looked at the ancient warnings surrounding them. Then at least we'll know why they were so afraid. Jake made his decision. Ben, transmit those coordinates to Earth Command. Full encryption. Amy, secure the area. We're going to document everything we can before we leave. What about the energy signatures from below? Dr. Grant asked. We investigate carefully. Jake looked at his team. Whatever the Vorthak were trying to tell us, we need to understand it, because if they're right, if we really are guardians, then we need to know what we're protecting the universe from. The ancient warnings seemed to pulse with malevolent energy as the team prepared to descend deeper into the ruins. Above them, the alien stars watched in silence, just as they had for 12,000 years. Admiral Helen Brooks stood in the command center of Earth's military headquarters, watching 6 different screens showing archaeological sites across the galaxy. 3 weeks had passed since Captain Morrison's discovery on the Vorthak homeworld, and the implications were staggering. Status report, she called to the communications officer. All teams are in position, Admiral. Dr. Newman is coordinating the research from here. Dr. Paul Newman approached with a tablet full of data. He looked tired but excited. Admiral, we've confirmed the coordinates from the Vorthak ruins. 6 different sites, all containing the remains of extinct civilizations. My teams are ready to begin excavation, Helen nodded. Proceed with caution. If these civilizations all left warnings about us, we need to understand why. On the first screen, a team worked among the crystal formations of the former Kristen. Collective. The alien structures rose from the ground like frozen lightning, beautiful but somehow threatening. Dr. Sarah Kim led the excavation, her voice crackling through the CUM system. The Kristens stored their information in living crystal matrices, she reported. It's taking time to access their memory cores, but we're making progress. The second screen showed the mobile ruins of the nomad clans. These ancient people had lived on massive ships that traveled between stars for millions of years. Now their vessels drifted empty in the void, their hulls scarred by time and space. Captain Rick Taylor floated in zero gravity inside one of the derelict ships. The nomads carved their warnings into the ship's hull using some kind of energy. Weapon. The marks go deep, like they wanted to make sure someone would find them. What do they say? Dr. Newman asked. Still translating, but the pattern is the same. References to guardians, warnings about something that must not be released, and coordinates that point to Earth. The third screen displayed the ethereal ruins of the Communion, a species that had existed partly in normal space and partly in another dimension. Their buildings seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. Dr. Mark Johnson worked carefully among the ghostly structures. The Communion left their messages in dimensional inscriptions. They exist in multiple realities at once, which makes translation difficult. But the core message is identical to what we found on the Vorthik homeworld. Admiral Brooks felt a chill. Identical how? Word for word, Admiral. Despite being separated by millions of years and thousands of light years, they all left the exact same warning about Earth. The fourth screen showed the metal ruins of the Machine Lords, a civilization that had transformed themselves into living computers. Their cities were vast networks of metal and circuits. Now cold and silent, Lieutenant Commander Katie Walsh stood among the towering processors. She had been chosen for this mission because of her expertise in computer systems. The Machine Lords stored their warnings in quantum processors. The data is incredibly complex, but the message is clear. They called Earth the lock and humanity the key. The key to what? Helen asked. Unknown, Admiral. But they seemed to think it was important enough to dedicate their entire civilization to monitoring us. The fifth screen displayed the organic ruins of the hive queens, insect-like creatures who had built their cities from living tissue. The structures had long since died, but their shape remained. Dr. Linda Torres examined the hardened biological matter. The hive queens encoded their warnings in genetic sequences. They bred special creatures whose DNA contained the message about Earth. Even after death, the information survived. And the message? They called humans the Watchers who must never sleep. They believed that human consciousness itself was somehow connected to keeping something contained. The final screen showed the oldest ruins of all, those of the ancient builders. These structures predated all other known civilizations by millions of years. They had built with materials that seemed to exist outside normal physics. Professor Don Miller worked alone among the impossible architecture. The ancient builders left their warnings in the fabric of space-time itself. The message is woven into the quantum structure of their buildings. It's the most sophisticated information storage system I've ever encountered. What do they say about Earth? Dr. Newman asked. They're the most specific of all the civilizations. They describe humans as the final guardians and warn that if humanity ever stops watching, something called the Devourer will break free from its prison. Admiral Brooks felt her blood run cold. The Devourer? They describe it as something that consumes entire realities. Not just planets or stars, but entire dimensions. The ancient builders claim it was trapped between worlds long ago, and that only human consciousness can keep it contained. Dr. Newman looked up from his tablet. Admiral, I'm seeing patterns in the data that suggest these civilizations didn't just leave warnings. They were actively coordinating with each other. Explain. The timestamps, the linguistic patterns, the technological signatures. These civilizations were working together, sharing information across vast distances and time periods. They formed some kind of alliance dedicated to watching Earth. Katie Walsh's voice came through the cum from the Machine Lord's ruins. Admiral, I'm accessing deeper data files. The Machine Lords have records of communication with the other civilizations. They called themselves the Watchers and maintained a secret network for millions of years. A network to do what? To monitor human development and ensure that we never learned the truth about what we were guarding. They believed that if humans discovered their true purpose too early, we might abandon our post. Helen felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders. But they're all extinct now. If they were so dedicated to watching us, what happened to them? Dr. Sarah Kim's voice crackled from the Kristen ruins. Admiral, I'm finding references to something called the Great Silence. It appears that all the Watcher civilizations began dying out around the same time, about 50,000 years ago. 50,000 years? Helen repeated. That's around the time modern humans appeared on Earth. Exactly. The crystal record suggests that the Watchers sacrificed themselves to ensure humanity would survive and take over their role. They saw something in human consciousness that made us uniquely qualified to be guardians. Professor Miller's voice came from the ancient builder's site. The quantum inscriptions here support that theory. The ancient builders write about the Great Transition, when the guardianship would pass to the young species near the yellow star. Dr. Newman looked at the data streaming in from all 6 sites. Admiral, every single civilization left the same final message. They all say that when the time comes, humans will know what to do. When what time comes? When the thing they were guarding tries to break free. Helen looked at the screens showing the ruins of 6 mighty civilizations, all extinct, all having spent their final years watching over humanity. Dr. Newman, I want all this information classified at the highest level. And I want our best scientists working on understanding exactly what we're supposed to be guarding. Yes, Admiral. And give me a direct line to Captain Morrison. If these civilizations left a network of warnings, there might be more information hidden in those ruins. As the teams continued their work across the galaxy, Helen Brooks stood in the command center and wondered what humanity had inherited from the stars. 6 civilizations had died to keep a secret, and now that secret was humanity's burden to bear. The screens flickered with ancient warnings, all pointing to the same terrifying truth. Earth was not just humanity's home. It was their prison, and they were both the guards and the key. Dr. Susan Clark stared at the energy readings on her monitor and rubbed her tired eyes. She had been working at the Deep Space Monitoring Station Alpha 7 for 6 months, and nothing had ever happened. The station floated in empty space between 2 dead solar systems, scanning for anything unusual. Tonight was different. "Computer, run the scan again," she said. The artificial intelligence responded in its calm voice. "Scan complete. Energy signature detected at coordinates 247.3 by 891.7. Pattern matches theoretical models for dimensional gateway technology." Susan felt her heart racing. Dimensional gateway technology was purely theoretical. No known civilization had ever successfully built one. "Computer, how far away is the energy source?" "Approximately 2.3 light-years. The source appears to be located in the asteroid field surrounding the former Vorthak homeworld." Susan immediately opened a communication channel to Earth Command. "This is Dr. Clark at Monitoring Station Alpha 7. I need to speak with Admiral Brooks immediately." While she waited for the connection, Susan studied the energy readings more carefully. The signature was unlike anything in her database. It pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost alive, growing stronger every few hours. "Dr. Clark, this is Admiral Brooks. What's your status?" "Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy buildups in the Vortex system. The patterns match theoretical models for dimensional rifts or gateway technology. Whatever it is, it's getting stronger." There was a pause. "Dr. Clark, I'm sending Commander Phillips to your location immediately. Do not approach the energy source. Just monitor and report." 2 days later, Commander Ryan Phillips arrived aboard the patrol ship Starfire. He was a veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts, experienced in dealing with unknown alien technology. His ship approached the energy source carefully, weapons ready. "Dr. Clark, we're approaching the coordinates you provided. I'm seeing some unusual structures in the asteroid field." Susan watched through the ship's cameras as the Starfire moved between the floating rocks. Hidden among the asteroids were massive structures that clearly did not belong there. They were geometric and precise, built from materials that seemed to absorb light. "Commander, those structures aren't showing up on any of our scans. They're invisible to our sensors." "But we can see them with our eyes," Ryan replied. "That's impossible." His team moved closer to one of the structures. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. The surface was covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "This technology is far beyond anything we've seen," said Lieutenant Mike Rogers, the ship's science officer. "The materials alone shouldn't be able to exist in normal space." As they approached, the structure began to glow with the same energy Susan had detected. Suddenly, the communication system crackled to life with a voice speaking in an unknown language. "Computer, translate that," Ryan ordered. "Translation incomplete. Language unknown." However, the vocal patterns suggest extreme distress or warning. The voice continued speaking, becoming more urgent. Then, without warning, a section of the structure opened, revealing a chamber filled with strange blue light. "Commander, I'm Reading life signs inside that chamber, Mike reported. Whatever's in there, it's still alive. Ryan made a decision that would change everything. Prepare and away, team, we're going in. Inside the alien structure, they found something impossible. A being that seemed to be made of pure energy floated in the center of the chamber. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, constantly shifting between different forms. The being spoke again, and this time the computer was able to translate. You are the young guardians. You have come at last. Ryan stepped forward carefully. Who are you? I am the last of the ethereal communion. My people existed in many dimensions at once, but we gave up our eternal life to watch over your world. I have waited here for 50,000 years for this moment. Why? What's so important about Earth? The being pulsed with sadness. Your world sits at the center of a dimensional web. Long ago, something terrible was imprisoned between the worlds. Your solar system is the lock, and human consciousness is the key that keeps it sealed. Dr. Clark's voice came through the system. Commander, I'm detecting similar energy signatures activating across the galaxy. Whatever this is, it's happening everywhere. The ethereal being grew brighter. The network is awakening. The other watchers left behind guardians like me, sleeping until the time came to reveal the truth. Something is stirring in the prison. The seals are weakening. What kind of something? Ryan asked. The Devourer. It consumes entire realities, not just matter and energy, but the very fabric of existence itself. It ate whole universes before we managed to trap it between dimensions. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Captain Maria Santos was leading a deep space reconnaissance mission when her sensors detected similar energy readings. Her ship, the Explorer, was investigating reports of unusual activity in a previously empty star system. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from an unknown source, reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Jenny Adams. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was weak but clear. Human vessel, please respond. I am dying, and there is much you must know. Maria ordered her ship to follow the signal. They found a small craft drifting in space, its hull scarred by time and radiation. Inside, they discovered another survivor of the ethereal communion. My name is Zephyr, the being said. I am the last record keeper of the Watchers. Your species has inherited a responsibility that spans millions of years. What responsibility? Maria asked. To keep the Devourer imprisoned. Every thought, every emotion, every creative act by a human strengthens the dimensional barriers. But there is more. The Watchers did not just monitor your world. They guided your development. Guided us how? Every major step in human evolution was carefully planned. Your capacity for hope, your refusal to give up in the face of impossible odds, your ability to imagine better futures. These traits were selected specifically because they strengthened the prison. Dr. Clark's voice interrupted from the monitoring station. Captain Santos, Commander Phillips, I'm reading massive energy spikes from 17 different locations. The network is fully active now. Zephyr's form flickered with urgency. The awakening has begun. The Devourer has sensed the change in the Guardians. It knows that humans have discovered the truth. What does that mean? Maria asked. It means it will begin testing the barriers. The dimensional walls will weaken and things will begin to slip through. Your world will face horrors that have not been seen for millions of years. Commander Phillips's voice came through the We're seeing movement in the structures here. The ethereal being says the Devourer is sending scouts. Susan watched her instruments with growing alarm. Energy readings are spiking everywhere. Whatever's happening, it's accelerating. Zephyr's voice grew weaker. The other Watchers prepared defenses, but they were never meant to be permanent. Only human consciousness can truly contain the Devourer. Your minds work on frequencies that disrupt its ability to exist in normal space. Then why are the barriers weakening? Maria asked. Because the Devourer is learning. It has been studying human minds for millennia, finding ways to influence them. Some humans are becoming its servants, working to weaken the barriers from within. The implications hit Maria like a physical blow. There are humans working for this thing, not willingly at first. But the Devourer is patient. It whispers to those who are angry, desperate, or afraid. It promises them power and purpose. Over time, they begin to believe they are serving a greater cause. Susan's readings showed the energy signatures were now appearing throughout human space. The network is activating stations near Earth. Whatever's about to happen, it's going to happen. At our home. Zephyr's form began to fade. The time of watching is ending. The time of active guardianship has begun. Tell your people what they face. Tell them that the fate of all realities depends on their strength. As the last of the ethereal communion died, Captain Santos and Commander Phillips found themselves staring at the most important discovery in human history. The Watchers had left behind not just warnings, but a network of defense systems that had protected Earth for millions of years. Now, that network was awakening, and humanity was about to face its greatest test. Dr. Tony Mitchell had been working at the Lunar Research Facility for 8 years, studying the empty space around Earth's solar system. He thought he knew everything about the region. He was wrong. The first sign of trouble came at 3:47 a.m. Earth time. His instruments detected massive energy buildups in what should have been empty space. The readings made no sense. According to his equipment, there were enormous structures scattered throughout the solar system, all of them invisible to normal observation. "Computer, run a full diagnostic on all sensors," he ordered. Diagnostic complete. All sensors functioning. Normally, energy signatures are genuine. Tony stared at the display showing dozens of massive objects surrounding Earth. They were arranged in a perfect defensive pattern, forming layers of protection around the planet. Whatever they were, they had been there for a very long time. "This is Dr. Mitchell at Lunar Research. I need to speak with Admiral Brooks immediately." While he waited for the connection, Tony watched the energy readings climb higher. The invisible structures were powering up, drawing energy from sources he couldn't identify. The amount of power involved was staggering, enough to run entire star systems. "Dr. Mitchell, this is Admiral Brooks. What's your status?" "Admiral, I'm detecting massive structures throughout our solar system. They're invisible to optical scanners, but showing up on energy detectors. They appear to be some kind of defensive network, the Watcher stations. We've been expecting this. Dr. Mitchell, I'm sending you classified files. Study them and prepare a full report on the network status." Tony received the files and spent the next hour reading about humanity's role as guardians. The information was overwhelming. Earth wasn't just humanity's home. It was the center of a prison holding something that could destroy entire realities. "Computer, analyze the energy patterns from the detected structures. Are they weapons? Analysis complete?" The structures appear to be dimensional anchors rather than weapons. They are designed to reinforce the barriers between parallel dimensions. Tony felt a chill run down his spine. If the barriers were being reinforced, something must be trying to break through. On the defense platform Guardian, Captain Alex Thompson was having his own crisis. His station orbited Jupiter, monitoring deep space for threats. Now his instruments were showing impossible readings. "Lieutenant Davis, confirm those readings from the Jupiter sector." "Confirmed, Captain. Multiple dimensional anomalies detected. The space around Jupiter is ... fluctuating." Alex looked at the display showing ripples in space itself. It was like watching water disturbed by something moving beneath the surface. "How many anomalies?" 17 separate disturbances, Captain. They're growing stronger every hour." "Any idea what's causing them?" Lieutenant Davis checked her instruments again. "The patterns suggest something is trying to push through from another dimension. The barriers are holding, but they're under increasing pressure." Alex opened a communication channel to Earth Command. "This is Captain Thompson on Guardian. We have a situation at Jupiter. Something is trying to break through the dimensional barriers." Admiral Brooks' voice came through the comm. "Captain, you're seeing the beginning of the breach. The Devourer is testing our defenses." "What are my orders, Admiral?" "Monitor and report. Do not engage unless directly threatened. We're still learning about the nature of this enemy. At the same time, Dr. Rachel Green was working in her laboratory deep beneath the surface of Mars. She specialized in dimensional physics, a field that had been purely theoretical until today. Now her life's work was becoming terrifyingly real. Her instruments detected the same dimensional fluctuations that Captain Thompson was seeing near Jupiter. But Dr. Green's equipment was more sensitive, designed to study the quantum structure of space itself. The barriers aren't just weakening, she said to her research assistant, Dr. Kevin Walsh. They're being systematically attacked. Whatever's on the other side is intelligent and patient. How can you tell? Look at these patterns. The attacks are focused on specific weak points in the dimensional fabric. This isn't random? Something is studying our defenses and looking for ways to break through. Dr. Green's computer chimed with an incoming priority message. Dr. Green, this is Admiral Brooks. I'm sending you classified information about the dimensional prison surrounding Earth. I need you to analyze the current state of the barriers. As Rachel read the files, she began to understand the true scope of the situation. Kevin, we're not just dealing with an invasion. We're dealing with something that exists outside normal reality. The Devourer doesn't just destroy matter and energy. It consumes the very concept of existence itself. What does that mean? It means that if it breaks free, it won't just kill us. It will erase us from reality completely. Not just our bodies, but our thoughts, our memories, our entire history. It will be as if humanity never existed at all. The implications hit Kevin like a physical blow. How do we fight something like that? According to these files, we don't fight it, we contain it. Human consciousness somehow disrupts its ability to exist in normal space. Every human mind acts like a transmitter, broadcasting on frequencies that strengthen the dimensional barriers. But if that's true, why are the barriers weakening? Rachel studied the data more carefully. Because it's found a way to influence human minds. Look at these patterns. The attacks on the barriers correspond to increases in human conflict, despair, and hatred. When humans are fighting each other, the barriers weaken. Meanwhile, on Earth, people were beginning to experience strange dreams and visions. Dr. Lisa Brown, a neuroscientist in New York, had been studying reports of shared nightmares appearing across the globe. The patterns are unlike anything in medical literature, she told her colleague, Dr. Steve Carter. People from different continents, different cultures, different languages, all having identical dreams about something dark trying to break through. What kind of dreams? They describe a presence that whispers to them, promising power and purpose. It tells them that humanity is meant for something greater than guarding a prison. It offers them freedom from their responsibilities. Dr. Carter looked at the brain scans Lisa had collected. The neural patterns are fascinating. It's as if something is broadcasting directly into human consciousness. That's exactly what's happening. The Devourer is trying to turn humans against their own nature. It's convincing them that being guardians is a burden rather than a purpose. Lisa's computer displayed the latest reports from around the world. Steve, look at this. The people having these dreams are all starting to act differently. They're becoming more aggressive, more selfish, more willing to harm others. It's trying to create chaos, Steve realized. If humans start fighting each other, the barriers weaken and it can break through. Back on the Guardian platform, Captain. Thompson watched the dimensional anomalies grow stronger. Lieutenant Davis, I'm reading massive energy buildups in the anomaly fields. Something big is about to happen. Captain, I'm detecting movement within the dimensional disturbances. There's something coming through. Alex saw them on his screens before his instruments could identify them. Dark shapes moving through the barriers between dimensions. They were small at first, no bigger than fighters, but they moved with intelligence and purpose. All hands red alert. We have hostile contacts breaching the dimensional barriers. The first scouts of the Devourer had arrived in normal space. They were testing humanity's defenses, learning about their capabilities. preparing for the larger assault to come. Dr. Green's voice came through the COM system. All stations, this is Dr. Green. The dimensional analysis is complete. The barriers are failing in a systematic pattern. We have perhaps 72 hours before complete collapse. Admiral Brooks' voice followed immediately. All human forces, prepare for immediate deployment. The time for watching is over. The war for reality itself is about to begin. As the first dimensional scouts began their assault on human positions, the Ancient Watcher Network responded. The invisible stations throughout the solar system opened fire with weapons that bent space and time itself. The battle for Earth had begun. Dr. LeVar Davis stared at the brain scans covering her laboratory walls. For 3 days, she had been monitoring the changes happening to human consciousness around the world. What she was seeing defied everything science understood about the human mind. "Kevin, look at this pattern," she said to her assistant. "Every human brain on Earth is resonating at the same frequency. It's like we're all part of one giant neural network." Dr. Kevin Price studied the data with amazement. "Lavra, this is impossible. Individual human brains don't have the power to connect across continents, but they are connecting. And more than that, they're strengthening each other. The more humans who join this collective consciousness, the more powerful it becomes." Lavra pulled up another screen showing electromagnetic readings from around the globe. The energy field generated by human thoughts is affecting reality itself. Every time someone feels hope, creates art, or refuses to give up, the field gets stronger. What kind of effects are we talking about? The dimensional barriers around Earth are stabilizing. The creatures that have been breaking through are finding it harder to maintain their form in our reality. But the changes weren't happening without cost. Reports were flooding in from hospitals around the world. Humans who couldn't adapt to the collective consciousness were experiencing severe mental strain. Dr. James Park, working at a medical center in Seoul, was treating dozens of patients with similar symptoms. "They're experiencing what we're calling consciousness rejection," he explained to his colleague, Dr. Anna Lee. "Their minds can't handle the connection to the collective." "What happens to them?" "Some recover after a few days. Others become permanently isolated from the shared consciousness. But the most dangerous ones are those who actively fight against it." Anna looked at the patients in the isolation ward. "They're the ones working for the creature, aren't they?" "We think so." When humans reject the collective consciousness, they become vulnerable to outside influence. The entity that's trying to break through seems to be able to control minds that are isolated from the rest of humanity. Around the world, Captain Chris Evans was discovering that the collective consciousness was changing more than just human minds. His fleet was engaging the shadow creatures near Mars when he noticed something remarkable happening to his crew. "Captain, our weapons' effectiveness has increased by 300%, reported Lieutenant Sarah Bell. "The shadow creatures are having trouble maintaining their dimensional stability." Chris watched the battle through the ship's view screen. When his crew focused their minds together, the shadow creatures became solid enough for human weapons to damage them. "Sarah, what's causing this change?" "The crew is unconsciously working together, sir. Their shared thoughts are somehow forcing these entities to exist more fully in our reality, making them vulnerable." "Exactly. But it requires intense mental focus from the entire crew. The moment anyone stops concentrating, the creatures become intangible again." The battle was interrupted by an emergency transmission from Earth. "General." Pete Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system with urgent news. "All units, we have confirmed reports of major dimensional breaches opening across the solar system. The entity responsible for these incursions is preparing for a final assault on Earth." Chris felt a chill run through his ship. "General, what are we dealing with?" "Intelligence suggests the creature calls itself the Devourer. It has been imprisoned between dimensions for millions of years, and it's using human collaborators to weaken the barriers keeping it contained." The collaborators were becoming a serious problem. Colonel Jane Murphy was coordinating the defense of critical facilities when she received reports that changed everything. "General, The humans working for the entity aren't just sabotaging our equipment. They're organizing into military units. They have weapons, vehicles, and they're attacking civilian populations. Pete studied the global situation map. Red markers showed confirmed attacks by human collaborators in over 50 cities. How many are we dealing with? Conservative estimate puts the number at 100,000 worldwide, but it's growing. Every hour. They're using some kind of mental influence to recruit new members. What kind of influence? They promise people power, purpose, and freedom from what they call the burden of guardianship. Many recruits genuinely believe they're saving humanity from an evil conspiracy. Meanwhile, Dr. Rachel Green was working frantically to understand how the dimensional prison actually functioned. Her laboratory was filled with data from the Watcher ruins, and she was beginning to see patterns that terrified her. "Computer, analyze the relationship between human consciousness and dimensional stability," she commanded. Analysis complete. Human neural activity generates quantum field fluctuations that reinforce dimensional barriers. The effect is exponential. The more humans who participate, the stronger the barriers become. Rachel realized the full implications. Computer, what happens if human consciousness becomes divided or weakened? Dimensional barriers will fail. Based on current projections, if more than 40% of the human population becomes disconnected from the collective consciousness, the barriers will collapse entirely. She immediately contacted Admiral Brooks. "Admiral, we're approaching a critical threshold. If the Devourer can turn enough humans against their own species, it won't need to break through the barriers. We'll tear them down ourselves." Admiral Brooks was dealing with her own crisis. Reports were coming in that the shadow creatures were becoming more organized, more intelligent. "Dr. Green, our military units are reporting that these entities are learning our tactics. They're adapting to our weapons and developing counter-strategies. That's because they're connected to the Devourer. Every battle teaches it more about human capabilities and weaknesses, but humanity was learning too. Around the world, people were discovering new abilities as the collective consciousness grew stronger. Artists found they could paint images that calmed the minds of the collaborators. Musicians created songs that strengthened the dimensional barriers. Even children were contributing, their natural creativity and hope adding power to the collective. Dr. Loveraw Davis documented these changes with growing excitement. "Kevin, humans are evolving in real time. We're developing abilities that seem designed specifically for this conflict." "What kind of abilities?" "Enhanced empathy that can reach the minds of the collaborators and bring them back to the collective. Creative visualization that can actually affect reality. And most importantly, an unbreakable hope that strengthens every time it's challenged." The most remarkable discovery came from Captain Maria Santos, who was investigating one of the dimensional breach sites near Pluto. Her team found something that changed their understanding of the entire conflict. "Admiral, we've discovered a massive structure hidden in the outer solar system. It appears to be a prison designed to contain something enormous." "How big are we talking about?" "The prison itself is larger than Jupiter. Whatever's inside it has been trying to escape for millions of years." Maria's science officer, Dr. Tom Brown, studied the readings with amazement. "The prison walls are covered in symbols from every Watcher civilization we've discovered. They all work together to build this. And human consciousness is the key that keeps it locked?" "More than that, Captain. Human consciousness is the lock itself. Every human thought, every human emotion is part of a vast mental mechanism that prevents this entity from breaking free." As the fourth day of the crisis began, humanity found itself fighting a war on multiple fronts. The shadow creatures were becoming more dangerous. The human collaborators were growing in number, and the dimensional barriers were weakening with each passing hour, but something else was happening. For the first time in human history, the entire species was working together toward a single goal. The collective consciousness was growing stronger, more focused, more determined. Children in schools were solving mathematical problems that helped scientists understand dimensional physics. Artists were creating works that inspired hope in millions. of people, ordinary citizens, were performing acts of courage and creativity that strengthened the barriers keeping humanity safe. The Devourer had waited millions of years for this moment, but it had made one critical mistake. It had assumed that humanity, like every other species it had encountered, would eventually break under pressure. Instead, humans were doing what they had always done when faced with impossible odds. They were refusing to give up, and their refusal was becoming a weapon more powerful than any technology the Watchers had ever built. The final battle was about to begin, and humanity was ready. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the flagship Earth's Hope, watching the space around his home planet tear itself apart. The dimensional barriers were failing faster than anyone had predicted, and massive rifts were opening throughout the solar system. "Admiral, we're reading energy signatures unlike anything we've ever seen," reported Captain Lisa Grant, who had been promoted after her discovery of the Vorthic ruins. "Whatever's trying to break through is enormous." Jake looked at the tactical display. The prison structure near Pluto was cracking like an egg, and dark energy was pouring out of every breach. "How long do we have?" "At current rates, complete barrier failure within 6 hours." Around Earth, the human fleet had assembled for humanity's final stand. Ships from every nation floated in formation, their crews linked by the collective consciousness that had grown stronger each day. But Jake knew that conventional weapons would be useless against what was coming. Dr. Rachel Green's voice came through the communication system from her laboratory on the moon. "Admiral, I've discovered something about the prison mechanism. Humanity doesn't just guard the Devourer, we are the key that keeps it locked away." "Explain." "Human consciousness operates on specific quantum frequencies that disrupt the entity's ability to exist in normal space. But there's more. We have 3 options for dealing with this crisis." Jake felt the weight of the species' future on his shoulders. "What are our choices?" "First, we can become the new Watchers. Humanity would dedicate itself entirely to maintaining the prison, giving up space exploration and focusing only on keeping the Devourer contained. That's not living. That's just surviving. Second, we can face the entity directly in combat. Based on our analysis, human consciousness can be weaponized against it, but the cost would be enormous. Most of humanity would need to sacrifice themselves to generate enough mental energy to destroy it." Jake closed his eyes. Both options meant the end of human civilization as they knew it. "What's the third choice?" "We try to change the Devourer itself. Instead of fighting it or containing it, we use our consciousness to transform it into something that no longer threatens existence." Commander Amy Rodriguez, now leading the assault forces, spoke from her command ship. "Admiral, that sounds impossible. How do you transform something that devours entire realities?" "The same way humans have always solved impossible problems," Rachel replied. "We refuse to accept that impossible means inevitable." As they debated, the crisis was reaching its peak. Captain Chris Evans was fighting shadow creatures throughout the asteroid belt when his sensors detected something that changed everything. "All ships, the main entity is emerging from the prison." "Repeat, the Devourer is breaking free." The creature that emerged from the dimensional rift was beyond human comprehension. It was darkness given form, hunger made manifest, despair turned into a living thing. Just looking at it through the viewscreen caused several crew members to collapse. "Sir, the entity is affecting our minds directly," reported Lieutenant Sarah Bell. "It's trying to make us feel hopeless, worthless, like giving up is the only option." Chris felt the creature's influence pressing against his thoughts. It whispered that humanity was doomed, that they had always been doomed, that fighting was pointless. But something else was stronger than the despair, the collective consciousness of humanity itself. "All crew, focus on what makes you human," he ordered. "Remember why we fight, why we create, why we never give up?" The response was immediate. As the crew focused on their hopes and dreams, the shadow creatures around them began to weaken. Human consciousness was indeed a weapon, but it was powered by everything that made humanity worth saving on Earth. The final battle was being fought in the minds of every human being. The devourer was trying to turn people against each other, to make them believe that cooperation was impossible. That hope was foolish. Dr. Lavra Davis watched the neural patterns of the global population as the entity's influence spread. Kevin, we're losing people. The despair is spreading faster than our ability to counter it. How many? 30% of the population has disconnected from the collective consciousness. If we lose another 10%, the barriers will collapse. Completely. But something remarkable was happening among the humans who remained connected. Instead of becoming weaker as their numbers decreased, they were becoming stronger. Each person who held on to hope made everyone else more powerful. General Pete Rodriguez was coordinating the final defense when he received reports that changed his understanding of the battle. "General, the children are doing something incredible," reported Colonel Jane Murphy. "They're creating shared imaginary worlds that are becoming real. Their combined creativity is generating new forms of energy that the entity can't absorb." "What kind of energy?" "Pure possibility. The children are imagining futures where humanity wins, where the devourer becomes something beautiful instead of something terrible. And their imagination is making it real." Jake realized that the children had found the answer. "All units focus on transformation, not destruction. Don't try to kill the devourer, try to show it what it could become." The battle that followed was unlike anything in the history of warfare. Instead of weapons, humanity used art, music, stories, and dreams. Every act of creativity weakened the entity's hold on reality and strengthened the possibility of change. Captain Maria Santos, leading the fleet near the main dimensional breach, watched as her crew began to sing together. The song was simple, about hope surviving in darkness, but it resonated through space itself. "Captain, the entity is responding to the music," reported Dr. Tom Brown. "Its energy patterns are changing. It's becoming less chaotic, more organized." "Is that good or bad?" "I think it's becoming more human." The transformation was happening across the solar system. Wherever humans chose hope over despair, creativity over destruction, cooperation over conflict, the devourer's essence began to change. Dr. Rachel Green monitored the process from her lunar laboratory. "Admiral, the entity is learning from us. It's discovering what it means to create instead of consume, to build instead of destroy. Is it working?" "The dimensional barriers are stabilizing. But more than that, the entity is beginning to understand concepts it has never experienced before: love, friendship, the joy of creating something beautiful." As the hours passed, the transformation accelerated. The devourer, which had spent eternity consuming realities, began to create new ones. Its hunger became curiosity, its despair became wonder, its isolation became a desire for connection. The final moment came when the entity spoke directly to humanity's collective consciousness. Its voice was no longer filled with hunger and rage, but with something like gratitude. "You have shown me what I forgot in my endless hunger. I was once a creator, long ago, before I lost myself to consumption. You have reminded me of what I used to be." Jake felt tears running down his face. "What will you do now?" "I will create again. I will build new realities filled with wonder and possibility. And I will guard them as you guarded the prison that held me." The entity began to fade from normal space, not because it was being destroyed, but because it was choosing to exist in the spaces between realities where it could create without threatening existing worlds. As the crisis ended, humanity found itself changed. The collective consciousness remained, but it was no longer desperate or afraid. It was confident, creative, and ready to explore the universe with new understanding. The ancient warnings were updated across the galaxy. Where once they had read, "They guard something worse than death," they now read, "They guard something better than hope. They guard the possibility of redemption." Humanity had faced the ultimate test and discovered that their greatest weapon wasn't their refusal to give up, but their ability to believe that anything, even the darkest force in the universe, could be transformed by the power of hope and creativity. The stars awaited, and humanity was finally free to explore them, not as conquerors or guards, but as teachers and friends to whatever wonders they might find.